Welcome to this lecture within the European legal system in how the wording on privacy in the different treaties and conventions has been incorporated. First, going back to the three environments, so to speak, namely privacy, private life, and data protection, and that can only be restricted to protect society or citizens against crime. Okay, first, this is Article 8 out of the European Convention on Human Rights. That's the 1950 formulation of how private life and family life should be respected. And you can see here that private and family life is a separate issue, so to speak. Then there's the home, my home is my castle, and correspondence, so how you read and connect and communicate with other people. Then, what has been part of some cases, and we will see that in the next module, is a person's right to protect personal life, also including the processing of data, personal data. And slowly but inevitably, the Strasbourg court has indeed taken this stance, that within respecting private life, also the processing of personal data should be taken into account, despite not being formulated as such within Article 8 of the European Convention. Okay, then there is, since the Lisbon Treaty, Article 16 in the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, it says that private life should be respected, but that notably that processing of personal data by the Union institutions and the member states and its agencies and everything else should be respected. So before that, there was no explicit, let's say, pointing at the institutions and at the member states to be congruent with the privacy enactments as we knew them in the human rights conventions, but that came part of the Lisbon Treaty, and then processing of personal data by Union institutions became part of the formulation of the treaty. Then the Charter, which was in a certain legal no man's land between 2000 and 2009, but since 2009 it has been part of the Lisbon Treaty, and here you see differences. For instance, in Article 7, it's not correspondence but communications. For the rest, private life and home is the same. Whereas Article 8 of the European Convention does not contain the protection of personal data, but is being considered as being part of the respectation of private life. Here, it's very adamant in what way personal data should be protected. Namely, it should be processed fairly for specific purposes. You need to have the consent of the people that are whose data is being gathered. And on the other hand, there's also sometimes that there are legitimate interests basis necessary to give your data to certain governmental institutions, for instance. So here you see the differences in the diverse formulations of the different human rights, and that's why Article 52 is important, because there was the agreement that they should take into account the both ways of how to deal with the separate formulations of Article 7 and 8 within the Charter and Article 8 of the European Convention. Okay, when we see Europe and privacy, how the development came about, well, we start, of course, with the Council of Europe Treaty, the Convention in 1950, and then the European communities started to become part of the ongoing discussions on how to protect privacy with the Directive of 1995. Then, after the Charter came into being in 2000, then the European Union in 2009 started to work on the regulation for general data protection, and of course at this moment there's also still negotiations going on for protecting the communications, the e-privacy of the European citizens. Okay, this explains the enactments and the formulations of the different texts which deal with data protection, and the next lecture will deal with the different courts within the European continent, both the Luxembourg court as well as the Strasbourg court.